Greetings, Blazely Dragon here, and today we're actually going to go back to a topic that a lot of people like to hear about, and that is a topic called Wicca. Now, this is not going to, of course, be exclusively about Wicca. It's also going to be about ritual tools. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what is usually associated with the element of fire in the South, and that's typically any sort of a blade. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about two items here. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what's known as an Athame, and then I'm going to be talking about what's known as a bolline. And the main reason I'm making this video is to clarify this. A lot of people think, oh, this is a bolline. And others might consider this to be an Athame. So let's talk about a few of the things that are usually considered to be an Athame and a bolline and their usage. And let's also talk about this particularly. This one is what I want to talk about the most because people will specifically look for this. By the way, you can pick this up online. This is like everywhere. If you look for a bolline, this is one of the first things that pops up. And it usually runs about $30, roughly, USD.
This is one of the places that you can actually get it from. This is Azure Green. There is actually a link in the description below. This, of course, it runs $31.95, which is about where you're going to find it on average, pretty much anywhere you shop for online.
And yes, I've had it for quite a while, so like the sheath is coming apart. And just for reference, when you have this in here, this is open on this side, so just be careful. So yeah, here you go. That's basically what you got going on here. It is one solid piece of metal. It is full tang all the way through here, and it's got this metal plate with the guard here and a pin through it. There's two pins. This is very sturdy. Doesn't come apart very easily. And now, the main point I'm trying to bring up with this is when you were talking about Wicca, there are two typical knives that you'll have. One of them, of course, is called a bolline. One of them is called an Athame. And the difference is their usage and the handle. The handle of a bolline is a white-handled knife. Now, the knife itself can range from a typical double-edged, single-edged. This one right here is a crescent moon-edged. And the crescent moon is not what makes this a bolline. What makes this a bolline, which to me it's not a bolline, is the white handle. Supposedly this is bone. I don't know if it's actual bone or not. It could be, but it's supposed to be white bone. I guess it's kind of a little tarnished. They're not always going to be the same yellow discoloration on them. But supposedly, I don't even know what type of bone it is. I mean, I guess it could be. It kind of looks like it might be. It also looks like it's treated or covered with something. So I'm not really too sure on that. Let's see, I guess come over here and get a little closer on that. So, like I said, this is sold as a bolline, and the purpose of that being the white handle. This crescent shape, it's just a crescent shaped knife. It's basically a small sickle. And I honestly, with this being $30, you could probably, if you're looking for a crescent type of a knife, you could just go out and buy an actual hand sickle.
This is just one example of a hand sickle you can find on Amazon. Obviously, this is something larger for like cutting down grass or weeds or something like that, but it is obviously an option. Also, here is another option which actually makes much more sense as a utility knife, also with a bone handle, also from Azure Green. This is also a type of bolline. This particular one is obviously a folding one. So again, there's many options that you can get. Some are more practical than others.
This is serrated here on the inside, and the outside is edged. It's not super sharp, but it does have a nice edge to it. So what is the purpose of a bolline or a white-handled knife, specifically in Wicca or other practices such as Wicca? Well, when you're talking about specifically a bolline, its purpose is for cutting. You were talking about chopping herbs. You were talking about carving into candles. This serrated edge here if you are taking on wood or something, as you're coming back and forth, it actually does this rocking motion naturally on its own just by coming back and forth. So it's actually really nice for cutting wood. Now, I highly recommend, of course, if you are going to be go gathering wood, wands, staves, whatever the case may be, that you utilize branches that have already fallen off of a tree. I would not cut off of a live tree. That's just personal preference. The backside of this is great for slicing of herbs, also cutting them as needed off. Now, in that case, you do want live herbs. I would highly recommend getting into herbalism if you are going to use herbs that are not pre-prepared. But a knife like this is fairly popular, but it doesn't have to have, again, this crescent. That's not what makes it the Boline. It's the white handle. So that's just basically a hand sickle. The hand sickle is very commonly associated too with many harvest deities, gods and goddesses. You will often see crescent moon shaped knives or actual hand sickles used in druidry. So this right here, this particular one, which again, this is sold as a Boline for about 30 USD, you'll basically see a lot of people pick this up for many reasons. So it's very, very nice, very popular. And like I said, it's pretty sturdy. Now, the interesting thing about this, as far as its association with druidry, this is steel. So if you get into some of the Celtic lore and traditions, steel is not good to use, especially when you're talking about the Fae or fairy magic or anything along those lines, because iron and steel is carbonized iron. It's basically if you take iron ore and you add carbon to it, you get steel. So it is iron. And iron is supposed to be poisonous, bad, negative for fairies and for the Fae. So typically you want something bronze, copper, something along those lines, just for reference, if you are interested in those paths. But I'll get into those more in later videos. Now, something like this, this actually frustrates me. I picked this up actually for the purpose of very similar to an Athame. I don't use that term for it, but this is basically a Scottish dirk. I know there's another name for it, and I do apologize and not know the pronunciation for it. It's very small, very lightweight. It was like $5. I got it from Bud K, and Bud K has got some fantastic double-bladed, single-bladed, fixed-bladed knives that would be perfect for any form of ritual knife, Athame, etc. And they get them cheap.
This is the exact one I actually purchased. It is still on their website, but it's no longer $5. It's $12.99. Still a fairly reasonable price. A lot of these stuff that's on Bud K are more like decorations with wall hangers. This, again, if you're using it for ceremony, it really doesn't need to be anything super fancy or super sturdy. Here's another one on Bud K that I thought was kind of similar. Both of these, again, are having links below the video, so if you do want to check them out, if they're still available, they're worth looking into if you're interested.
Well, I picked this up, and then I would say 6 months to a year later, I saw them all over the place, and there'll be all sorts of items, pentagrams or pentacles or the crescent moon symbols for the goddess added to these, and they're actually sold as being Athames now, even though that when I first saw it on Bud K, I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great for a ritual knife because it is tiny. This is really, really little, very, very lightweight. So let's talk about an Athame. So, and this is really beautiful little work. Like I said, this is dirt cheap. That's why I liked it so much. I don't know if this is leather. This doesn't feel like leather. It feels kind of like a plastic. It is double-edged. But so an Athame in Wicca is specific for energy work. Again, this is one of the main elemental tools that you would have besides for your chalice, the pentacle disc, your wand would be the Athame, for the 4 elements. And this particularly would be, like I said, for fire, for change, because a blade cuts, it changes things. It's forged in fire. So yeah, so it's usually associated with that. But the Athame never, ever, ever cuts anything. No herb, no candle. You never, ever, ever, ever cut anything with this. This is spiritual representation only. So it is only used in the ceremony. If you're going to cut something, that's your all-purpose Boline with the white handle. Now, again, you can get something like this with a white handle. And a lot of people, you don't have to have white-handled and black-handled. Some people will pick up stuff like this. Here's another one I picked up that now I'm seeing all over the place as well. Again, from Bud K. real cheap for, I want to say, 5 or 6 USD.
I wasn't able to find that one on Bud K's website at the time I made this video. However, there is this one, which is basically the same knife, but in all silver. It's a little prettier, but it's also a little bit more expensive. Still a nice option.
And, it's just a little double-handed little knife. I mean, it's a little nice thing. Now, this doesn't have a black handle. It's actually brown. And this is, I don't even know if this is bronze, but it is getting tarnished. I've had this for a while, too. Again, cheap knife that you can pick up with a little sheath that's nice. And some people use stuff like this as an Athame. Doesn't have to have, like I said, doesn't have to have that black handle. And I've got tons of other ones that I can show you. But I wanted to get these two just because they're very popular right now. A little bit bigger on this one, a little bit more comfortable in the hand. And also has the cross guard, which is nice. This one does not. So I kind of actually prefer this for a spiritual type of knife, just out of personal preference. But again, if you are going to get something, if you want to keep your Athame pure and uncut, you get something like this. Should be blunt, should be dull. Like I said, it's more a representation. The Boline white-handled knife, that's what you want to have razor sharp, and be careful with it. But that is what you use for cutting of herbs, cutting of candles, preparing your spell components for your rituals and for your ceremonies. This you just draw with your casting of your circle for your energy work, your banishing, drawing the symbols in the air. It's kind of like a different representation, very similar things that you do with the wand, you can also do with an Athame. So that's just kind of some interesting information. And like I said, specifically with stuff like this, if you are looking for something like this, look for a hand sickle. This is like one of the few you'll find out there specifically like this, unless they're custom made, because they don't really make stuff like this. With the crescent moon knife is basically what this is. So just be aware of some of its purposes. Just don't feel like you're locked in. If you are interested in practicing something like Wicca, and I am not a Wiccan, I am not trained in Wicca. It is one of the many paths that I've researched and looked up information on, but I do not consider myself a Wiccan. I definitely do not. That's not a path that resonates with me personally, but it does have a lot of good information. It is very popular, which is why I wanted to touch upon the Boline and the Athame specifically, and this being listed online as a Boline, which would be more accurate just to say it's a crescent moon knife or crescent moon dagger, whatever the case may be. Just more of a knife, because not really dagger size. So if you are looking to get those, just be aware that if you do get actual training, I mean, if you're not getting training, you're just picking up pieces and applying them to your own personal path of what you feel works for you, then it really doesn't matter what knife or blade you get for whatever purpose. It's irrelevant. But if you do want to follow a traditional path or tradition, I highly recommend actually finding a teacher, joining an actual coven, and then they will guide you on what to use, what can be associated with what, why you would use it. But like I said, that's personal preference. You don't have to do that. That's just what some people choose to do. And traditionally, like I said, it is black-handled for the Athame, white-handled for the Boline. So, yep, there's a little bit of information. Remember to thumb up, like, and subscribe. Feel free to ask questions below. Don't have all the answers, but I will share, as always, information that I've had, and if things come up like this that caught my interest and I had to clarify this, actually work with one of my employees. She actually follows the path, and she was looking for a knife like this, and she couldn't really find it anywhere. She actually found someone, it's like a trade thing on Facebook where you make things for each other, and it just has to be handcrafted, and he does metal work, so he's taken a railroad spike and he made one of these, which is basically a crescent moon knife, and she thought that was really awesome. So she was trying to find something like this, and we're having that discussion, and we were mentioning about the fact that this was listed as a Boline, and I'm like, wait a minute. So did a little bit more research, because I wasn't too familiar with the term Boline. Athame was a term I was familiar with, the black-handled knife, the white-handled knife. I just wasn't aware that this was referred to, or white-handled knife was referred to as Boline. Wasn't familiar with that term, probably till about a month or two ago. So this is a little bit newer research for myself as well. So I figured, I picked up something new, share it with the internet. Definitely it's out there. You can go Google it. You'll find plenty of other people have talked about it. This is definitely nothing unique or special coming from me. This is just something I wanted to share with you as my viewer. So thank you for watching.